afternoon and welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie and today we're going to talk a little more about water-wise landscaping. Now last week we took you to the Water Conservation Park in South Jordan and to about a type of landscaping called localscapes. It's a wonderful way to do water-wise landscape. There's also landscape design called xeriscaping, which a lot of people mispronounce and call it xeroscaping, which it is not. Xeriscaping is a really great form of water-wise landscaping. Well, do you have to utilize localscaping or xeriscaping to have a water-wise landscape? And my thoughts are no, you do not. There are several different ways you can be water-wise in your landscape and not have to go to any extremes or even change a lot of things about your landscape. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, number one, why do we have to be water-wise? I live here in Utah, and I don't think you can see behind me, but I live at the base of the Wasatch Mountains. Absolutely gorgeous mountains. Most winters they're covered in snow, and that is where we get both our culinary water and our secondary water. Here in my town, we do separate out the culinary water and the secondary water. The secondary water comes from a watershed that is in the mountains behind us, comes through a stream, fills up a tank, and then we use that for our irrigation water. The culinary water is through wells that are once again supplied by the moisture in the mountains. So if we have those wonderful mountains full of snow in the winter, why do we have to be careful with our water? Well, in my town and in our watershed, sometimes the snow misses that area and we don't get enough moisture to supply all the irrigation needs of our town, so we have to purchase irrigation water from other towns. Our water supplies are always in fluctuation. Sometimes we'll have enough and sometimes we don't. So in my mind, it is always just the wise thing to do to conserve and plan for the future. Now also, our area is planned to double in size, and I'm not sure on the year that they said, but I think it's by 2050. And our water supply is not going to double. So we need to be good stewards of the land, and we do need to conserve water. It's just a wise thing to do. So what can we do to conserve water? Do we need to have cactus and rocks? Let me show you my landscape. My landscape is not perfectly water-wise. And let me show you what I have done to cut down on water use. Okay, so as you can see here, I have a lush green lawn in the back. And can you guess how often I water it? I think we've talked about that in a previous video, but I water this lawn in the heat of the summer, even when it hits 100 degrees, 3 times a week. Right now I'm only watering it. It only needs to be watered actually once a week right now because it's so cool, but I may add an extra watering in now and then in the fall if it gets extra dry or hot. What I'm also going to be doing here shortly, matter of fact, now that I think about it, I might start doing it now, is I need to start drought stressing this lawn a little bit. I've talked about that in the video with the lawn ginger, what drought stressing is. What that means is I am going to stop watering it until you can see the foot tracks and it changes color a little bit. And then I'll give it a really good deep soaking. What that does is forces the roots to grow deeper. Now I need to do that while the grass is actively growing so that the roots can actually go deeper. If you can see the length of my lawn, let's get a little bit closer and look at the length. This is a little extreme. My dear 19-year-old son did not mow the lawn last Saturday, and it's about 7 p.m. and he still hasn't mowed it today. I need to go inside and prod him. But I mow it and keep it at least 3.5 inches long, sometimes a little longer. That shades out the soil, makes sure that there's not a lot of evaporation going. I make sure that my irrigation heads are working. I fix any drips that there are, and then I fertilize appropriately. This lawn, I will be putting down the 3rd fertilizer for the year, probably mid-October, just before a rain. Actually, I might do it at the beginning of October, just before a rainfall, so that it soaks it in. I put down the heaviest application that time of year. It's gets pulled into the roots because I do it while the roots are still actively growing, strengthens them over the winter, and then in the spring it's ready for a nice flush of growth. Okay, so we talked about the lawn, and now let's look at my hill here. We have some very drought-tolerant plants on my hillside. This hillside, in reality, only probably needs to be watered maybe an hour and a half once a week. I end up doing it an hour twice a week, just because there are certain areas of it that are not covered by the drip irrigation as well. But we've got our cotoneasters and junipers. We've got our Canadian red chokecherries and lilacs. All of these are very drought tolerant. Got my little tiny fruit tree, the Dapple Dandy Pluot, which is about ready to be harvested. It's really late this year for some reason. We've got some Mugo pines back there. The one tree that I do not like that I have on this hillside that I should have torn out when I moved in, but I didn't because I thought I could do it later, are my aspens. They are not drought tolerant. They are suffering this year, and now they're going to be really difficult to remove. These were planted before I moved in. What I would prefer in their place is a ginkgo, which is very drought tolerant. This hill is watered by drip irrigation. It's got some netafin, which is the long tubes that have the holes punched in them, and that's how they are watered. The rest of this hill over here, the bottom half gets hit by lawn irrigation, and then the top half really doesn't get much water at all. I have drip irrigation in my garden beds, but somehow, even though there's no irrigation in between the beds, we get enough moisture to let lettuce go to seed. In the spring, it's usually the rain that gets these, gets the lettuce growing. It's how they're watered. The grapes are on the irrigation from the hillside. This section right here is my most water-hungry section, and it's a very small area. It's shaded by the house. This is the north side of the house. And it's watered with the lawn irrigation. So it gets watered 3 times during the summer a week, and it's watered, it gets reduced as the lawn irrigation gets watered. And it's done beautifully. And it's because it's on the north side and is shaded that I haven't had to add extra water to it. If I do have to add extra water, I'm not going to up the lawn irrigation. I will just pull out my hose. When I moved into my house, all I had was lawn in the front, and I really wanted an area to plant plants. So of course, I moved in here in the early 2000s, and everybody had islands in their lawn, and I was not educated enough to know that I shouldn't do that. So I put an island in the middle of my lawn. Next year, or maybe the year after, the rest of the lawn is going to be removed. I'm going to add more plants, a sitting area, and a path, and make this a much more water-wise landscape. But this area in the center has plants that can tolerate lawn water, and that's how they're watered. This area over here, we moved the irrigation heads, the lawn irrigation heads, so they no longer water it. It's all got the netafin drip irrigation that's connected to the garden beds. And I actually don't know how my garden beds are doing so well, because this area I have set to water twice a week. So I guess in reality my garden beds are only getting watered twice a week. And they did, well, maybe that's why my tomatoes didn't do so well. So let's go over a few other things. So besides irrigation and making sure you're watering appropriately and choosing plants that are more drought tolerant, another thing you can do is watch how you plant your plants. Make sure that the soil is amended correctly. If you have sand, you can add compost. If you have clay, you can add compost. And put a good thick mulch over the top to hold the water in. So mulching is another way to help reduce water usage. The last thing you need to do is understand how much you are watering. Like we've talked about in past videos, your irrigation clock can be turned on and just left. And if you don't ever look at it again, you're going to be watering inappropriately about half the time. So look at your clock, figure out how to work it, ask somebody to show you how to work it, and change the times for times of year. For example, like I said right now, you don't need to be watering the same as you did during the summer. It's cooler. The ground is holding moisture more. We're getting rainstorms that are coming through. The same in the spring. You don't need to water as often as you do in the summer. So adjust your watering times. Hoping this helps a little bit to understand about water-wise landscaping. Next week I'm hoping to show you a property where they actually flipped their strip. They took the grass out of their mow strip in front of their house and put some water-wise plants in there instead. So there's a lot of things that we can do to become more water-wise without making drastic changes, and I'm hoping that you can try some of them. First thing that you can do this year to be more water-wise is go look at your irrigation clock. Are you still watering 3 times a week or more? If you are, cut back. You cut back by a day or two. As I said, right now my lawn and landscape only really needs to be watered about once a week. If it warms up again, I'll add an extra day. So go check your clocks. Look at your property, see what changes you can make so that you can be more water-wise, and enjoy your landscape. If you have any questions, or if you have anything you would like to add about being water-wise, or please start a discussion. Let's talk about it and see what we can do. In the meantime, I hope you are out in your landscape enjoying this beautiful fall weather and have a wonderful garden adventure.